Americans love their stories. According to a report released by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Americans spend on average over 3 hours a day consuming stories, whether it's through watching television, reading books, or communicating with friends. A majority of those 3 hours are spent watching TV and movies. I was curious as to why Americans love their stories so much, so I sat down with student filmmaker Annie Rydell as she talked her latest short film, Sunday, and as I tried to uncover the story behind the stories.
This film, I should very easily be able to answer what is this film about, but I often struggle with the line between plot and story. And I think that this film definitely has a story, but it doesn't have a lot of plot. And that's kind of what I value in storytelling in general, but especially in film. Observing somebody existing in a state and how they change. So in this case, my film Sunday is about a girl who just started college who essentially over the course of a day starts to become distant and numb as she experiences the so-called Sunday scaries. This story is, like most of the stories that I write or try to tell, very autobiographical. Really, Sunday was something that I had to make for myself. I'm a very sentimental and emotional person. My therapist has often called me a romantic, and not in a good way. I tried to channel those into this film, and I think it was honestly very helpful for me. I tend to, when I'm feeling these very strong emotions, shut down and not talk a lot and feel everything very deeply inside. And without doing a voiceover or a monologue of the main character, I wanted to try and capture what it feels like or what it might look like when you have all of these emotions inside. Or on the contrary, when you're so overwhelmed that you just become numb.
This story is obviously very important to me, and I'm just really excited to see it come to fruition in a semi-professional manner.
A lot of people starting out are very, very scared to ask other people for their time or help or advice. So you get a lot of student films with very little crew, very little support, where you have one person who's doing every single job, very overworked, very burnt out. What I say is there is no harm in asking. If you know in your heart that this project is not going to be as good if you do it all yourself, and it's going to be better if you ask a friend to figure out the foods for that day, or figure out holding the boom, or just having an extra hand on set, ask.
Most of the things I've created in the past, while yes, I'm proud of them, they haven't had this level of support from a crew, from a class. I think I'm excited to see how far I can take my storytelling and then what that can inspire me to do in the future. I will say that I'm definitely a perfectionist, and it's gotten in the way of not only my academics, but also just projects that I'm working on for myself that I'm passionate about. With this project though, even when I started to shoot, it became very apparent that this was just not going to be how I imagined it. In the beginning of September, I told one of my friends about this project, and she was like, oh my god, I want to act in it. And I thought she'd be great for the role. So I did my rewrites and my shot listing and my storyboards with her in mind. And then she was like, oh, actually, I have 4 essays due that weekend, so I probably shouldn't. And so I was 5 days out from shooting, and I did not have an actress to play my lead, and I didn't know what to do. I thought about postponing my shoot. And again, going back to my perfectionism and my fear of failure, I was like, this is not how I visualized it at all, even after accepting that I have these constraints of resources and people and time and environment. This was not how I visualized it. It took me a while. I was able to accept that it's not going to be how I imagined it to be the first time I like had this idea.
If you were able to have the picture in your head of what you want the end project to be, see it clearly in your mind, and you know how you're going to get there, the kind of naysayers, even if they have like authority and experience and whatever, you can still give it a shot. Go for it.
And so she went for it. Within 48 hours, Annie directed and shot Sunday here in Ithaca, New York.
The best part, this is like very cheesy, but there was a scene on my porch where I had my two actors having like a heart-to-heart. I was like, okay, if my actors can do this well, and if I can frame this well, I think this will be very emotional, and I'm excited to see how I can make it work. So I set up the camera, I bring my first actor down to the porch, I tell her to sit down, and as soon as she enters the frame, I was like, oh my god, this is actually exactly how I visualized it. This one frame that I have is, like, this is how I wanted it. And I am just so excited that at least one thing turned out the way that I had, like, visualized it from the very beginning. Like, I had visualized this shot from 2 years ago when I was sitting at my aunt's house in Michigan, like, writing a note on my phone about, like, short film idea, emo girl, and it's a Sunday, and ooh, Midwest emo vibes, like, this is what I wanted. And so I was so happy about that, and that, like, kind of just boosted me to finish the rest of the production, which I really love.
What do you see the future of Sunday being? Where is it going to go next?
I honestly would love it if Sunday never saw the light of day. But that's very selfish of me. And I do think it has potential to speak to a lot of people. It's hard for me to recognize that in my own work because I'm just such a strong self-critic, but I do see Sunday potentially going past my film classroom at Cornell and even past the screening that will happen at the end of the semester.
According to Sydney Relihan, award-winning filmmaker and former student researcher at Cornell University, TV and cinema can change people's lives. We look at the screen and we make a connection. Even those behind the screen matter to us too.
Getting to see different people from different backgrounds, seeing different people's stories, but also being able to see your own story.
The TV shows, movies, and stories we hold so dearly tell us who we are and what we value. In this case, Annie Rydell tells us who she is and what she holds closely. Annie continues to reveal herself through this exclusive look and public premiere of For Martha, her prequel to Sunday. Sunday can be seen on December 9th in Cornell's Kipling Theater. This has been Kristen Chan reporting on the story behind the story. I hope you enjoy.
So what are you guys all doing? You catching frogs? Wait a minute, maybe that snake turned into a mouse. What do you think?
Or maybe that's his dinner!
The morning of your funeral, I woke up early to write the eulogy while Dad made his coffee and everyone else was still asleep. I sat at the kitchen table trying to put into words what you meant to me and what you still mean to me, but nothing I wrote felt like enough. And I know nothing will ever be enough. How am I supposed to say anything when the book I told you to read is still half finished on your desk and I wear your necklace every day knowing it was never supposed to be mine? I can't go home anymore without watching you take your last breath over and over and over again. And when I try to sleep, the dogs bark and scratch at your bedroom door because they don't get it. They still think you might be coming back. But then I do fall asleep, and you're there again, and you're fine, and we're 17 on the 4th of July. And I know it's gonna be okay, but I miss you, and this fucking sucks.